It was a time I'll never forget. You know that feeling when everything you worked for, everything you believed in, crumbles in front of you? That's how I felt when they kicked me out. No warning, no explanation, just gone. All because I was pregnant, like it was some kind of burden they couldn't deal with. I remember that day so clearly. I was sitting at my desk, working like I always did when I got the call. It was my boss, Karen. She was supposed to be one of the people I trusted, someone who'd been there for me through thick and thin. She told me they couldn't keep me on the team anymore, that my condition wasn't in line with their company's needs. I didn't even have a chance to respond before she hung up. I was stunned, sitting there, holding the phone in my hand, feeling like I had been slapped in the face. I knew I couldn't stay there. I knew my life was about to change, but not like this. I wasn't even sure what came next. The pregnancy was already tough enough, but to be thrown out like that, without any care, no sympathy, just cold indifference. I had worked hard for that position, sacrificed so much, and yet it felt like none of it mattered. For weeks, I didn't know what to do. I felt lost. But deep down, something inside me kept pushing. I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. I was going to make them regret it. I wasn't going to stay broken, crying over how unfair life was. No, I was going to get up, put on a brave face, and fight. And that fight was going to be personal. I didn't have any clear plan at first, just an urge to make things right, to make them see that I wasn't weak. I had to figure out a way to show them that I was stronger than they thought. After all, I was carrying a child. I had a reason to fight, a reason to rise up and prove them wrong. And as time passed, the anger I felt turned into something else. It was no longer about getting back what I lost. It was about making them pay for the way they treated me, for stripping me of my dignity when I needed it most. What they didn't know was that the new version of me was going to come back stronger. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about my own transformation. And when I walked through those doors again, they wouldn't recognize me. I would be unstoppable. But the most interesting part? They had no idea who I really was, or what I was capable of. It wasn't long before I realized that the world wasn't going to stop just because I had been knocked down. I couldn't sit around forever feeling sorry for myself. So I did what I had to do. I began to rebuild. It wasn't easy, and at times it felt like a mountain too steep to climb, but I wasn't one to back down. I started by focusing on what I had. I had my health, my determination, and my baby. I had a fresh perspective on everything, a drive I didn't even know existed in me before. I began putting in the effort to better myself. I started reading, learning new things, expanding my skills in ways I'd never thought about before. I couldn't just be a victim of what had happened. I had to be better than that. I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to my old job. The people who pushed me out, the company that saw me as a liability because of my pregnancy, they didn't deserve my loyalty, my skills, or my effort. No, I was going to prove I could be better, not just for myself, but for the child I was carrying. Every step I took felt like I was making up for all the years I had spent in that place, giving my energy to something that never valued me. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear that I didn't just want to get back at them. I wanted to build something for myself. I wanted to create something that would show everyone just how much I was capable of. And when I looked around, I realized that my story wasn't unique. There were so many people out there, So many women like me who had been cast aside, ignored, treated as less because they were pregnant or because they dared to have a life outside of work. That's when it hit me. What if I could help those women? What if I could build something that not only empowered me, but empowered others too? I decided that I would start my own business, a platform for women who had been overlooked, sidelined, or dismissed in the workplace. I wanted to create a community where women could find the support they needed to thrive, to succeed, and to fight back against the system that constantly tried to hold them down. I started researching, reaching out to other women who had been through similar experiences. I talked to entrepreneurs, business owners, and others who had turned their struggles into successes. And slowly, I began to form a plan. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had learned that anything worth having never was. I needed to learn about the legal side of things, about business strategy, and how to market my ideas effectively. So I spent months reading, watching videos, attending seminars, and even talking to mentors who could help me along the way. As the months passed, my confidence grew. I could feel myself transforming, not just physically with the pregnancy, but mentally as well. I was learning how to be a leader, how to trust my instincts, and how to put my energy into something that would be my own. But as much as I had started to see the light at the end of the tunnel, there was one thing that still burned inside me: the need for justice. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. I wanted to show them what they had lost. I wanted Karen and the rest of the team to see what they'd done to me, and I wanted them to feel the weight of their actions. It wasn't just about taking my job back. It was about showing them that they couldn't just throw people away like that and get away with it. I had a purpose now, but it wasn't just about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about making sure they understood the consequences of their actions. They didn't just hurt me. They hurt a whole community of women who had been dealing with this for years. And now I was going to be the one who did something about it. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew that it would take time, effort, and a lot of sacrifice. But I was ready. I was ready to take what was mine, to build something bigger than myself, and to show them just how wrong they were. They didn't realize it yet, but they had just sparked a fire in me, one that wouldn't burn out until I had achieved everything I set out to do. The thought of walking into that company again, showing them my success, seeing their faces when they realized what I had built, it kept me going. And as my pregnancy progressed, I felt more powerful than ever. I wasn't just carrying a child. I was carrying the weight of everything I had worked for, everything I was about to achieve. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not Karen or anyone else, take that away from me. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about me, about my future, and about proving to myself that no matter how hard life tried to knock me down, I could always rise up and come back stronger. And when the time was right, I would make sure they all knew it. The more I worked on building my business, the clearer my path became. Every day, I spent hours researching, learning, and connecting with others who shared my passion for empowering women. Slowly but surely, I was turning my dream into a reality. And with each passing day, I could feel my strength growing, not just physically as my pregnancy progressed, but mentally and emotionally as well. But there were days when it felt like everything was too much. There were moments when I thought about giving up. The loneliness of doing it all on my own, the uncertainty of whether or not it would actually succeed, it all weighed heavily on me. But every time I thought about throwing in the towel, I reminded myself of why I was doing this. I wasn't just building a business. I was fighting for my dignity, my self-respect, and for the right to be treated with the same value and respect as anyone else. I had a purpose now, and that purpose fueled me. But the road to success wasn't as simple as I had hoped. I ran into roadblocks, some expected, some completely out of the blue. The competition was fierce, the market was saturated, and every step forward seemed to be met with 2 steps back. Yet, I kept pushing, because that's what I had learned to do over the years. No matter what life threw at me, I refused to back down. And as I built my business, the thought of getting my revenge on Karen and the company never left my mind. I knew that the day would come when I would have the power to make them regret what they did to me. But I also knew that I couldn't let my anger control me. I had to be smarter than that. I had to play it cool, stay focused, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. That moment came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, I got an unexpected email. It was from a recruiter, one of the top headhunters in the industry. The email stated that Karen's company was looking for someone with my skill set. They were offering a lucrative position with a higher salary than I'd ever made. They wanted me back. I stared at the screen for a long time. It felt like a dream. My heart raced and my thoughts were a whirlwind. Was this my chance to get back at them? Was this the moment I had been waiting for? Or was I just being offered another shot at the same toxic, disrespectful environment that had thrown me away? I didn't know what to do at first. My emotions were all over the place. Part of me wanted to ignore it, walk away, and keep building what I had started. But another part of me saw this as an opportunity to show them just how wrong they had been. They thought I was done. They thought I had nothing left to offer. Well, I was going to show them exactly what I was capable of. So, I responded, I agreed to meet with the recruiter. I told myself I wasn't doing this out of desperation or hope. I was doing this because I could, because I wanted them to see that I didn't need them, but they might need me. When the meeting day arrived, I walked into the office feeling like a completely different person. I wasn't the woman they had fired anymore. I wasn't the one who had been tossed aside, alone and vulnerable. I was a businesswoman now. I was a mother, a force to be reckoned with. And as I walked through the doors of that building, I felt a sense of power I had never felt before. Karen was there, sitting behind a desk with a nervous smile on her face when she saw me. I could tell she didn't expect me to show up. She probably thought I had moved on, that I was just another casualty of the system. But I was anything but that. We exchanged pleasantries, and as she spoke about the new role and all the perks they were offering, I couldn't help but feel a certain satisfaction in knowing that they were now scrambling to get me back. It was like a taste of sweet revenge. But I didn't let it show. I listened, nodding in all the right places, pretending to consider the offer. The whole time, I was plotting my next move. As the meeting ended, Karen asked if I was interested in taking the position. Without missing a beat, I smiled and said, I'll let you know. The moment I walked out of that building, I couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph. I had them right where I wanted them. They had underestimated me. They thought I'd just crawl back, begging for my old job, but I wasn't going to make it that easy for them. I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. Instead of taking the offer, I decided to play it smarter. I reached out to some people in the industry, built connections, and positioned myself in a way that would leave them no choice but to watch me rise. I was going to succeed on my own terms, and when I did, they would be left in the dust, regretting ever underestimating me. I hadn't fully realized it yet, but every step I was taking, every move I made, was bringing me closer to the moment when I would confront them. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about proving to myself that I was more than what they had reduced me to. I wasn't just a woman who got pregnant and lost her job. I was a force to be reckoned with, and this was only the beginning. It's strange how revenge has a way of changing you. At first, I thought it was just about getting back at Karen, at the company that tossed me aside. But as the weeks passed, I started to realize something. The revenge wasn't just about showing them they were wrong. It was about showing myself that I could rise from the ashes, that I could do something on my own. And each step I took, every move I made, felt like I was getting closer to the final moment when I could look them in the eye and know that I had won, not just against them, but against everything that had ever tried to hold me back. But even though I was building something for myself, the need for closure didn't fade. Every time I thought about the day I had been forced out, it burned in my chest. I could hear Karen's voice, cold and indifferent, telling me that my pregnancy wasn't good for the company. I could still feel the sting of that phone call, the way my world seemed to shatter with those words. It wasn't just about the job. It was about the betrayal, the way they'd made me feel like I was less than them, less than a person with a future. I started to put the pieces together. My business was growing, but I wasn't done yet. I was no longer just a woman seeking revenge. I was a woman seeking justice. And I realized that the best way to get it wasn't to walk away and let them think they had won. No, the best way was to show them how far I could go without them, and how much better I could be without their toxic environment dragging me down. I knew that in order to truly make them regret what they did, I needed to take everything I had learned from them and turn it into something better, something that would last. I'd spent years in that office, absorbing everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I had watched people rise to the top, all while stepping on the backs of others. But I also knew that not all of it had been bad. I had learned valuable skills, met influential people, and developed my own sense of what success should look like. So I began using that knowledge. I doubled down on my business, hiring a few key people, expanding my reach, and becoming someone people respected. Slowly but surely, my name started to gain recognition. It was a small, gradual process, but I could see it happening. I wasn't just another face in the crowd anymore. I was someone people listened to, someone people admired. And with that, I began to build my own network of contacts, the very people who could help me take things to the next level. But there was still one piece of the puzzle I hadn't figured out: how to confront Karen and the company without being reckless. I had to wait for the perfect moment, the moment when I was strong enough, when I had enough leverage to make them understand exactly what they had lost. And then, one day, that moment came. I was at a networking event, one I had been invited to by a potential business partner. It was a high-profile event, full of influential people, many of them from the corporate world. As I walked into the room, I felt a rush of excitement. This was my world now. This was where I belonged. And then, just as I was shaking hands and making small talk, I saw her. Karen. She was standing across the room, laughing and chatting with a group of people, completely unaware of my presence. For a moment, I stood there, watching her, remembering the way she had fired me, the way she had treated me like I was nothing. I could feel the anger building up inside me again, but this time, it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't the same helpless, betrayed feeling. This time, it was different. This time, I had the power. I walked over to the bar, keeping my cool, my face a mask of calm. I wasn't going to let her see me sweat. Not now, not ever. I ordered a drink, my eyes never leaving her as I formulated my plan. I didn't need to rush. I didn't need to confront her in front of everyone. That would be too easy. No, I needed to do this on my terms, when I was ready. The evening wore on, and I found myself speaking with a few important people in the industry. The conversations were enlightening, and the more I spoke, the more I realized that I was right where I needed to be. I was no longer the woman they had discarded. I was someone with power, someone with influence. I could feel it in the way people listened to me, in the way they respected my opinions. And then, just as I had hoped, Karen approached me. "Ellie," she said, her voice strained with surprise and a hint of guilt. "It's been a long time." I smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a smile that carried a weight, a smile that held years of pain and anger. I could see the hesitation in her eyes as she stood there, unsure of how to handle this encounter. "I know, Karen," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It's been a long time, and you know I've been doing well. Better than I ever imagined, actually." Her eyes flickered with confusion, and I could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to figure out what was happening. I didn't need to explain myself to her. She knew exactly what was coming. "I just wanted to say thank you," I continued, my words smooth, like a velvet knife. "Thank you for pushing me out, because if you hadn't, I wouldn't be standing here today, stronger and more successful than I ever thought possible. I owe a lot to you." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, speechless, as I made my exit. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation I had envisioned, but it was just as powerful. I had done it on my terms, in my own way, and as I left that event, I couldn't help but smile, because I knew that this was only the beginning. The days following that encounter felt surreal. I couldn't believe what I had just done. It wasn't just the satisfaction of seeing Karen's face as I walked away. It was the realization that I had finally taken control of my own narrative. I had always thought that getting revenge would feel like an explosion of emotions, a release of years of pent-up anger. But instead, it was calm. It was powerful in a way I never expected. I didn't hear from Karen after that night, and honestly, I wasn't sure what I wanted. Did I want her to come crawling back, begging for my forgiveness? Did I want to watch her squirm, knowing that I had everything I had ever wanted? I thought about it, but then I realized I didn't need her to apologize, and I didn't need her to suffer. What I needed was to continue doing what I was doing, succeeding. And that, in itself, was the best form of revenge. I had no interest in dragging out the past anymore. I had already proven to myself that I could rise above it, that I could build something of my own, that I didn't need the toxic environment Karen had represented. But just when I thought I could put it all behind me, life threw me one more curveball, one that I never saw coming. It started with a phone call. My heart dropped when I saw the number on the screen. It was a private number, and I wasn't sure whether to pick it up or not. But curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Ellie," the voice on the other end said, and I immediately recognized Karen's voice. "We need to talk," My mind raced. Talk? What could she possibly want to talk about after everything that had happened? I had made it clear I wasn't interested in working with her or the company again. But before I could say anything, she continued. I know I don't deserve this, but I need to make things right. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I was wrong. You were treated unfairly, and I failed you. I need to apologize. I couldn't believe it. I had to pause for a moment to process her words. An apology? After all the pain, after everything she had done to me, she was calling to apologize? Part of me felt like I should just hang up, move on, and never look back. But another part of me was curious. Was this real? Or was it just another attempt to make herself feel better? Why now? I asked, my voice steady but guarded. Why the sudden change of heart? She sighed, the sound heavy with regret. I've been watching you, Ellie. I've been following your success, and I realized something. Everything I said, everything I did, was wrong, and I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. I see the woman you've become, and I respect you. I'm sorry. The silence on the other end was deafening. I didn't know what to say. The truth was, I didn't need her apology anymore. I didn't need her validation. I had already found my own strength, and I didn't need her or anyone else to tell me I was worth something. But for some reason, hearing those words from her, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Not because I forgave her, but because I realized that I had won. Thank you for your apology, I said finally, my voice calm but firm. But I'm fine. I've moved on. And I hope you can too. There was a long pause before she spoke again. I understand. I just wanted to tell you that. Goodbye, Ellie. And with that, she hung up. I sat there for a few moments, processing everything. Her apology didn't change anything, but somehow, it felt like closure. The story between us had ended, and I was ready to move on for good. The old Ellie, the one who had been broken and betrayed, was no longer the person I was. I had grown into someone new, someone stronger, someone who had learned the value of resilience and self-worth. The next day, I woke up feeling lighter, as if a chapter had finally closed. My business was growing, and my reputation was becoming stronger by the day. More and more women were reaching out to me for advice, for support, for guidance. I was building something meaningful, something that gave me purpose, and I was beginning to see the fruits of my labor. But even as my success continued, something inside me told me that I wasn't done yet. Karen's apology, though significant, didn't erase everything I had gone through. I couldn't just forget how I had been treated, how they had discarded me like I was nothing. There was still one thing left to do, one final act of closure. I reached out to the head of the company, someone who had been in the background all along. It wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about making sure the company knew that what they did was wrong and that there were consequences for how they treated people. I had built something from nothing, and now I wanted them to see what they had lost. The call was brief. I made it clear that I wasn't interested in working with them again, but I also made it clear that they had a responsibility to treat people with respect, no matter their situation. The conversation was polite, but the message was clear. The time for apologies was over. Now it was about accountability. And with that, I finally felt like I could close that chapter. My life had taken a new turn, one that was entirely my own. I wasn't just a victim of circumstances anymore. I was a woman who had reclaimed her power and built a future on her own terms. And as I looked ahead, I knew that nothing could ever break me again. The revenge I sought had already been fulfilled by becoming the woman I always knew I could be. As time passed, the noise of the past began to fade into the background. The anger, the resentment, those emotions that had fueled my every decision, every move, slowly started to feel distant. The more I focused on what was in front of me, the more I realized that the best revenge, the most satisfying victory, wasn't the one that came from watching them regret their actions. No, the real satisfaction came from the life I had built, the business I had grown, and the strength I had found within myself. I had become someone new, not just a mother or a business owner, but a woman who had taken control of her life, who had proven that nothing, not even betrayal, could keep her down. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this journey wasn't just about getting back at those who wronged me. It was about finding my true purpose, my passion, and making sure that no one, no company, no person could ever take that away from me again. But even as I thrived, I couldn't ignore the whispers of doubt that occasionally crept into my mind. Was I truly done? Had I really closed the door on my past, or was there still something left unresolved? There were nights when I couldn't sleep, when I lay awake thinking about Karen, about the company, about everything they had taken from me. Those thoughts would haunt me, not because I wanted revenge, but because I still felt like there was a piece of me I hadn't fully reclaimed. I knew I had grown, I had evolved, but the past still lingered like a shadow, a reminder of how far I had come. I wasn't sure if it was about closure or just the desire to finally silence the ghosts of the past. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was one final piece of the puzzle, one last confrontation I had to have in order to truly put it all behind me. And then, out of nowhere, I got a message. It was from a former colleague, someone I had worked with at the company before everything fell apart. The message was short, but to the point. I think you need to know something. They're trying to cover it up. Karen's been talking about how they let you go, and it's not what you think. You deserve to know the truth. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. What truth? What was she talking about? My heart raced as I read the message again. What was Karen hiding? What had they been doing all along? I didn't waste a second. I reached out to my former colleague asking for more details. She hesitated at first, but then she told me everything. Karen hadn't just let me go because I was pregnant. No, it was much darker than that. It turned out that Karen had been playing a game, manipulating situations behind the scenes, undermining me, spreading rumors about my work ethic, painting me as someone who wasn't committed enough. She had been trying to cover her tracks, trying to make herself look good while pushing me out for personal reasons. It wasn't just about me being pregnant. It was about her jealousy, her need to assert power over me. And as it all unfolded, a deep sense of satisfaction washed over me. They hadn't just fired me out of convenience or for the reasons they had stated. They had been part of a bigger scheme, one that I had never seen coming. Karen's betrayal went deeper than I ever could have imagined. It wasn't just about a company firing an employee. It was about the petty, vindictive behavior of someone who couldn't stand to see me succeed, who had been threatened by my potential. And in that moment, I knew everything I had been feeling. The anger, the desire for revenge, had been justified. I didn't act immediately. I needed to think, to process everything I had just learned. But as the days passed, I realized that this was the missing piece I had been waiting for. This was the moment I had been looking for. The truth. And now that I had it, I had the power to do something about it. I decided to confront Karen, but not in the way I had originally planned. I didn't need to make a scene or humiliate her. No, this time I was going to be smarter about it. I would confront her with the truth, and I would make sure she understood exactly what she had done. I reached out to her, but this time, it wasn't a casual conversation. I wasn't going to give her a chance to apologize again. I told her that I knew the truth, that I knew about the lies, the manipulation, the jealousy. And I told her that I wasn't interested in her apology. What I wanted was accountability. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, not just for me, but for the entire company. I could hear the panic in her voice as she tried to explain herself, but I didn't let her off the hook. I calmly, firmly laid out everything I knew. And as I spoke, I could almost hear the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need her to suffer. I didn't need her to admit her wrongs. I just needed to take control of my story, to claim the power that had been taken from me all those months ago. When the conversation ended, I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was simply stating the facts, and in doing so, I had taken back everything that was mine. No more lies, no more manipulation. I was free. In the end, I realized something important. The best revenge is not about watching others suffer. It's about living your life in a way that makes their actions irrelevant. I had done that. I had built a life on my terms, and no one, not even Karen, could take that from me. I was stronger than I had ever been, and nothing could ever make me feel small again. The past was behind me, and I was finally free to move forward, knowing that I had won, not because of what I did to others, but because of who I had become. I thought that after confronting Karen, everything would finally fall into place. I expected peace, closure, the satisfaction of knowing that I had taken control and put the past to rest. But as the days passed, something strange happened. I realized that the real battle wasn't just about the revenge or the confrontation. It was about what came after. I had built something from nothing. I had clawed my way back from the depths of betrayal and failure. But now, as I stood at the top, I had to figure out what I wanted next. For the first time, I felt the weight of my success. I was no longer fighting to prove something to others. I had already done that. No, now I was fighting to prove something to myself. I had grown so much, and yet, deep down, I felt like there was still a part of me that hadn't fully embraced this new version of myself. I wasn't sure if it was fear or pride, but I felt a hesitation in my chest. Was I truly the person I wanted to be? Had I become the kind of woman I was proud of? I took a step back, giving myself space to breathe, to reflect. The business was thriving. More women were joining my platform every day. More clients were reaching out to me for guidance, for advice, for help. It was everything I had dreamed of. And yet, there was still an emptiness that lingered. The anger that had once fueled me, that burning desire to show everyone how wrong they had been, had started to fade. And as it faded, I realized that I didn't want to live my life consumed by anger anymore. I had proven my point, but now I wanted to live for something greater. I thought about my baby, the life growing inside me, and I realized that I wanted to build something not just for me, but for them as well. My success, my triumph over the past. It wasn't enough if I didn't find a deeper meaning in it. I wasn't just fighting for revenge or self-validation anymore. I was fighting to create a legacy, to create a life that would be worthy of the child I was about to bring into this world. And so, I started to shift my focus. Instead of pouring all my energy into making my business bigger, I began focusing on its impact. I thought about the women who were using my platform, the women who had been where I once was, knocked down, underestimated, undervalued. I started thinking about how I could help them in a more meaningful way. I wanted to provide them with not just the tools to succeed, but the support they needed to feel powerful, to feel like they were capable of anything. I began hosting webinars, writing articles, and creating resources for these women, things that would not only help them build their own businesses, but help them rebuild their lives. I wanted them to know that their worth wasn't tied to a job, a company, or a toxic boss. Their worth was inherent. It was in them from the start, and no one could take that away. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still moments of doubt, moments when I felt like maybe I wasn't doing enough. The world was full of obstacles, and sometimes it felt like every time I made progress, something or someone would come along to try to knock me down again. The old fear crept back into my mind. The fear that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as strong as I thought. That maybe I was still that woman who had been fired, the one who had been discarded and left behind. But then I would think about the women I was helping, about the lives I was touching, and that doubt would fade. I realized that I wasn't just building a business. I was building a movement that could change the way women were treated in the workplace, a movement that would give them the confidence to speak up, to stand up for themselves, to know that they had the power to take control of their own futures. And as I worked harder, as I put everything I had into creating this movement, I began to realize something else. I was starting to find peace, not because everything had been fixed, not because I had exacted my revenge, but because I was finally doing something that mattered. I had found my true purpose, not in revenge, but in building a future, not just for me, but for every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. There were still challenges ahead, of course. There were still people who would doubt me, still people who would try to tear me down. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of the future because I knew that no matter what came my way, I had already won. I had proven to myself that I could rise above anything, that I could take control of my life and create something meaningful out of the wreckage. And as I looked ahead to the future, I felt a sense of hope, a sense of excitement for what was to come. The business, the movement, it was just the beginning. I was building something that would outlast me, something that would help women everywhere find their voice, find their power. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. I had taken everything that had happened to me, all the pain, the betrayal, the doubt, and I had turned it into something beautiful. I had turned it into strength, and now I was ready to embrace the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, because I knew that nothing, no one, could ever take away what I had built. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. As time passed, I saw the ripple effects of the work I had put into creating my platform. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about the legacy I was building. I could feel the weight of every woman who had reached out to me, telling me how my story had inspired them, how they had found their own strength in the process of watching me transform. It wasn't about revenge. It was about empowerment. It was about taking control of your life, no matter how many times you've been knocked down. But even with all the success, the fulfillment, and the growth, there was one last thing I needed to do. I needed to let go. I had spent so much time fighting, so much energy focused on getting back at the people who wronged me, that I had almost forgotten the importance of peace. Real peace. The kind that comes not from vengeance or success, but from within. The kind of peace that comes when you know, without a doubt, that you've done everything you could to make the world better. And so, I made the decision to stop looking back, to stop replaying the past over and over in my mind, to stop measuring my success by the wrongs others had done to me. I didn't need to keep holding on to my past mistakes or regrets. What mattered was who I was now, what I was building, and what I was giving back to the world. One night, as I sat at my desk, looking over my latest business strategies, I realized that I was living the life I had always wanted. Not just for me, but for my family, for my future. I had taken the worst moments of my life and turned them into something beautiful, something that would help others. And that was more than enough. The best part? I realized that I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I had nothing to prove. I wasn't just a survivor of betrayal and hardship. I was a creator, a builder, a woman who knew her worth and was using it to make the world a better place. And that, in itself, was the ultimate success. As my platform grew, as my community of empowered women continued to thrive, I knew that this journey had been more than just about revenge. It had been about healing, about self-discovery, and about finding the courage to take the next step, even when the road seemed uncertain. And as I looked to the future, I knew that the best was yet to come. And so, here I am, sharing this story with all of you, not as someone who's been broken and rebuilt by anger, but as someone who has been shaped by strength, resilience, and love. My journey isn't over. It's just the beginning of something much bigger, something that will continue to grow and evolve. If you're listening to this, I want you to know one thing. No matter what life throws at you, no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you have the power to rise again. You have the power to take control of your story, to build something beautiful out of the mess. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got so many more stories coming your way, stories that will inspire, motivate, and maybe even challenge you to look at life in a new way. So, subscribe now and join us on this journey of strength, growth, and resilience. Remember, the only thing standing between you and the life you deserve is the decision to rise. Choose to rise. Choose to take control, and watch as everything falls into place. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Lesson to take away. Life is full of challenges, betrayal, and setbacks. But it's not those things that define you. It's how you rise from them. The true strength lies in the ability to take control of your own story and use every hardship as fuel to become something greater. Never let anyone's actions define your worth. You have the power to create your own path, and that's where your true success lies.